Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Art in the Wild. I hope you guys are doing good. My hunt for northern saw-whet owl still continues. I have yet to find one this season. This past weekend, I was out circling a tree, putting in the work, checking as many trees as I can, and I looked up and there was this weird bird, like 5 feet from my face. No, like 3 feet from my face, like right there, and it was not a saw-whet. It wasn't even an owl at all. It was this weird skinny bird asleep. I was very confused, for like half a second I was thinking mockingbird, then the next half second I was thinking thrasher, and I'm staring at it really confused for like 5 seconds before I realized I was looking at my lifer yellow-billed cuckoo just like sleeping in a cedar tree 3 feet from my face. Like I could have picked it up off the branch like 7 feet off the ground. It was ridiculous. It was crazy. So then I backed off and I got some photos and then I left it alone. But that was a very confusing experience. But still no saw-whets. I am heading down to Cape Cod tomorrow to speak at a conference. Going to do a couple talks on owl photography, which is going to be fun. But yeah, when I'm down there, going to look for some owls, see if I can find one, particularly a northern saw-whet owl. That'd be pretty cool. But that's all I've got on my end. On today's episode, though, I talked with Sadie Hine, who is a 19-year-old wildlife photographer based in Northern California, and she kind of just shoots a large variety of wildlife. She shoots pretty much like everything. Her journey began with owls and urban wildlife, but since then her style has evolved to like incorporate herps and sea creatures and all that fun stuff. It was a really good episode. First part of the episode, we kind of just talked about how her style evolved over time and how she got into photography and stuff like that. And then we talked a good chunk about a specific style she has where it's like underwater photography. Like she's photographing critters in the water, but her gear is not actually underwater. And so we talked about how she did that. It's super cool. The shots turn out great. And then near the end of the episode, like the last quarter or so, we talked about how she has used photography and wildlife photography and nature in general as like a coping mechanism to help her deal with difficult times in her life and grief and stuff like that. So it was a good episode. I really enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoy it as well, and I will see you guys over there. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. I hope you guys have been getting out and doing some shooting and spending some time outdoors and all that good stuff. Today, I'm going to be talking with Sadie Hine about a bunch of topics, but generally speaking, her really unique style of photography and then what kind of wildlife photography has done for her life. But before we get into that, Sadie, have you been like getting out and doing shooting a lot, or have you just been super busy, or how has that been?
There's been a good mix of shooting and being busy, I'd have
Yeah.
to say. I've been this past weekend, there's been really good low tides here, so I've been going
Hmm.
out and photographing some sea creatures and stuff like that, which has been really productive actually, and I'm
Yeah.
really excited about some of those shots. But yeah, that's definitely been my main focus. With school and stuff, it's hard to get out
Hmm.
during the day at sunset, sunrise sometimes, but the tides, they just happen and I can still
Whatever.
go out and shoot at 10 at
Hmm.
night or whenever I need. So yeah,
That's cool. Yeah. How's school
that's
going?
been
How are you
good.
liking that?
I'm enjoying a lot of my classes. I'm studying wildlife right now,
Hmm.
and I'm finally starting to get out of some of the general ed courses and into some more specific stuff, which has
Those
been
are the
really
worst.
interesting.
Those are the
Yeah.
worst, man. I'm like,
It's a bit slow.
yeah, I did it. So I was in, I don't know if I've talked about this a lot on my podcast, but I was in college for a year in Montana State University, and now I'm just kind of like working on some side project myself and then also working full time. The
Mhm.
general ed classes, man, it's like you're sitting there and it's like algebra, and I'm like, dude, if I want to be a like wildlife ecologist, why do I need to know physics or something? It's just it's not, I don't know.
Yeah.
It wasn't fun, and it was a huge turnoff for me. And also, it's tough too with the time that you had with school, with that all going on, and getting out and shooting, and then trying to like, I'd have like I'd be really stressed because like midterms or finals are coming up, and I'm like, a great way to get rid of that stress is to go take photos of deer. So I'd go do that, and then I wouldn't study for the actual exams, and you know how that how that works
Yeah.
out. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
no, I feel that.
yeah, no, it's yeah, it was rough,
Yeah.
but it's good that you're enjoying it. What are you planning to do with the degree after school? It's fine if you don't know. I know a lot of people just don't know, but
Yeah, so it's I don't have something super specific. It would be a dream to um be able to use photography and stuff kind of as a main sort of career, or
Mhm.
just tie that into my work or everyday life. That would be incredible. And that's really kind of the main goal I have with this. It would be cool. There's a lot of interesting research opportunities and stuff like that that I'm also interested in,
Yeah.
but mainly I'd say I want to be able to tie in art and photography in one way or
Mhm.
another.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so I think I mean I've like you can do like conservation photography. You know, that's a whole thing. Like you don't necessarily need to
Mhm.
take the route that a lot of people do where it's like they do the workshops and stuff like that, you know, and the conservation because then you can tie it into like your own if you're doing like a research project, let's say on don't you guys have those really weird like flying squirrels up there? The Humboldt flying
You
squirrels or
do,
something like that?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If
Yeah.
you were to do like a
Mhm.
research project on those and then do your photography while you're doing that research project and then build up your knowledge there, and then you could run courses on conservation photography and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
yeah, you'll definitely be able to find a way to tie it into that. Are there any species, like if you were to do a research project on them, are there any like particular species you'd want to work with right now that come to mind, or is it just kind of like anything?
I'm kind of wanting to see what comes around. I definitely say my main focus is birds.
Yeah.
Owls are kind of what started this whole thing for me, so
Hmm.
they have a special spot.
Yeah, yeah, no, I got you.
And yeah, and there's a lot of really cool seabirds and stuff here. And I went on my first pelagic last weekend
Oh,
actually, and that
sweet.
was really cool. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So some good birding in there and stuff.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I remember Elliot was talking about the thing he was working on in school, like watching the baby.
Mhm.
I had him on the podcast and he talked about it like a couple months ago. He's talking about like the marbled murrelets he was watching.
Yeah.
And I felt so
Yeah.
bad because so many of the nets that he was watching just ended up the baby just were eaten by ravens. It was
Yeah.
depressing, you know.
It
I'd feel
was
bad.
really sad. I remember that. Yeah.
It was yeah. I mean, I would like to do certain aspects of wildlife research and research projects, but other parts of it, it's like, man, it would just be depressing to like if you had like six different nests you watched for like 3 months and you're like rooting for the baby and then just like a raven comes and eats it, you know, it would
Yeah.
that would be a drag. Now you mentioned owls kind of getting you into this whole thing. So when you got into wildlife photography, what was kind of the main encounter that got you into it? Have you always been into wildlife? Were you one of the pandemic people that got into it? Was it just a certain encounter a couple years ago? You're like, I want to take photos of animals. How did that really play out?
Yeah. So I've always been into wildlife, and I don't really remember my preschool years very well, but
Mhm.
my mom will always remind me that on the career day we had in preschool, I wanted to be an entomologist, which is a
Oh
person
wow.
who studies bugs. Because I
Hmm.
used to like flipping up the rocks and looking at all the critters and stuff.
Yeah.
My focus now definitely isn't entomology and bugs and stuff, but I've
Yeah.
definitely always kind of, had that drive to just get outdoors and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And I'd say it really picked up when I started going out with my dad in the evening in middle school. So I was maybe like 12 or 13 or so, and we'd go find all these owls that lived in our neighborhood in Colorado. And I think the first experience I had where I was really like, wow, this is cool, and where I got some pretty cool photos was
Hmm.
after a huge rainstorm. I had kind of stepped away into some bushes and stuff, and then I came out and there was four great horned owls sitting on perfectly on this log, and
Hmm.
the mom was there and she had a rabbit, and it was like half, it was kind of gruesome, it was kind of torn up and stuff, and she
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
feeding it to them. And it's just this family really close to me, and just gorgeous lighting from after the thunderstorm we had. And that just kind of stuck with me, and that was like, okay, that's pretty cool. This is really
Yeah.
pretty. And it was also crazy that all of that was just, a couple minutes from my house.
Hmm.
And that really got me interested too in just how much stuff is often overlooked in urban areas like that. Um, and yeah, that was I'd say that was it. There were a lot of other really cool owl encounters. I have a whole list I could go through and stuff,
I've
but
heard Colorado
that
is
was
good
probably
for
the
owls.
earliest one. What's that?
I've heard Colorado is good for owls from a bunch of people that live
It
out
is,
there.
yeah. I wasn't in the up in the mountains. Up in the mountains is probably a bit different. It's more little, smaller owls, like pygmy owls and stuff
Hmm.
like that up there,
Yeah.
which are pretty tricky. I don't have the best luck.
Hmm.
But yeah, out in the plains and stuff, and all of just the suburbs there. There's screech owls, great horned owls, even long-eared owls and stuff pretty frequently. So it was
Yeah.
a really cool place to grow up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. I mean, honestly, I think if you run into four baby owls with an adult and you have a camera and they're eye level on a log and you don't get into wildlife photography after that, that's kind of weird. You know,
Yeah.
I would be real. And then also, I mean, the log flipping phase, man. I mean, like, yeah, I was huge into that. I remember we were at this. I
Yeah.
used to live in this apartment for about a year. It was like a little apartment, a smaller building. Me and this kid, his name was Beckham. I was like, dude, if you flip rocks, you can find salamanders and all these cool bugs. And he's like, sweet. And there was this cobblestone lining around the yard of the property, and we
Mhm.
flipped all of them and ruined the whole cobblestone lining. And the landlord was like, "What are you guys doing?" Because they were all messed up. And we didn't even find a
Mm.
salamander or anything. We found, I don't know, some like beetles and a couple worms. It was pretty
Yeah.
anticlimactic. But yeah, no, I've noticed actually you do a lot of like herp photography, so like some like snakes and stuff like that. Did that come from
Mhm.
that kind of phase in your life? Or did that just kind of grow gradually and from a different thing?
Yeah, so as a kid, around the time I was flipping rocks and stuff, and a little bit later, I was really interested in salamanders and frogs and amphibians and stuff,
Mhm.
which, although Colorado does have some really cool species that you can find around there, it's pretty dry a lot of the year. It gets really cold. It's kind of limited compared to the East Coast and the West Coast and
Yeah.
stuff. And I moved with my family to California uh summer of 2020 during the pandemic at some
Mhm.
point, and suddenly there were salamanders everywhere, and that just
Yeah.
really, sparked an interest and stuff, and that really helped me explore new ways of doing photography that I hadn't before. It came with a lot of challenges that are so vastly different from, birds and owls and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's been really fun to explore all of that. And I'm, again, really fortunate to be in such a great place for some really cool herps. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yep.
I,
Mhm.
I'm out here in the Northeast and we have some pretty cool ones. I haven't really capitalized on it at all. I mean, I love them too, which is weird because as a kid I was obsessed with salamanders. If I found a salamander when I flipped a
Mhm.
log, and I only found like three when I was a kid because I was terrible at it for some reason, but I would like lose my shit. I was so happy whenever I found a salamander. And I know some
Mhm.
people out here that just they did a lot of yellow spotted work with them.
Mhm.
This past season, this past spring, and I really wanted to do it and I tried a couple of times, but I just really wasn't able to find them. And also I felt weird with because it's vastly different in an ethical sense as well. I feel like the
It definitely
rules
is.
are completely different. With birds, it's like if you look at a bird, a certain species of bird, the wrong way, you get canceled and like publicly crucified by everybody. But like when her
Mhm.
photography, it's like, oh, here's a snake, and you just grab it and like put it on a log, you know?
Yeah.
And coming from the bird scene, I feel really weird trying to, and being careful with like salamanders, like using gloves that aren't rubber gloves that aren't like a certain kind of rubber that hurts them, like latex or something, and then wetting it and stuff like
Mhm.
that. But moving them onto like a good place. I felt so wrong. I had a redback salamander and I was trying to do it and I just put him back and gave up. I'm like, I'm not doing this. It felt so
Yeah.
weird. Do you have you had that happen when you moved into more herp photography coming from birds?
Yeah. No, it's definitely very different. And that was earlier I'd mentioned there's a complete different set of challenges and stuff.
Hmm.
And there is that really kind of interesting curve to it because with birds, with an owl, you're not necessarily able to grab it and be like, okay, go sit right here and stay there,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But I'd say with herps, the main kind of set of rules I follow or guidelines is just to after finding them to keep it as quick as possible, keep it also as natural as possible. If there's a scenario where you're able to shoot in situation, then do that. And to just get them back to the exact same spot you found them
Hmm.
as soon as you can, and to make sure if you are flipping cover and stuff to put it back exactly how you found it so the moisture stays the same underneath and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's just to kind of keep it limited, keep it, keep it pretty akin to what they would be doing naturally as well
Hmm.
too if you do pose them or something like that. To do it right on top of the log you found them on instead of bringing it like,
Yeah, don't put
on
like
a
a
little
salad.
journey through the forest. Yeah.
Don't put a salamander on like a cliff face or something and be like, I found this guy here. Like, no, you didn't. I've seen some
Yeah.
images like that, and it's like I'm looking at them, and it's just like they're like, I came across this. It's like a blue spotted salamander on this big boulder with like a mountain overlook, and I'm like, bullshit. Like, you did not,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. No, that
um,
is
yeah.
the reality of it is most of these animals are nocturnal. So you could probably find them in cool spots like that, but it would
Mhm.
most likely be at night,
Yeah.
which a lot of photographers aren't shooting at night.
Hmm.
And yeah, no, they live underground most of the time. So it is unfortunately pretty difficult to try and document them, without kind of, having to flip for them or something like that,
Hmm.
which yeah, definitely different from birds for sure.
It's funny earlier when you mentioned that you can't pick up an owl and move it. I went to
Yeah.
this talk with this owl researcher who did like he didn't actually have a degree, but I think he like started like in the 80s or 70s when things were a little more lenient and then just became like a leading expert on a certain species of owl, like a
Mhm.
worldwide leading expert. And I was talking to him, and he was just telling me a story. He's like, "Oh, if I see a saw-whet when I'm out with my friends, I'll just pick it up out of the tree and then show it to them, and then put it back."
Whoa.
And I was like, "What?" I was so baffled when he said that.
Mhm.
Now, you started, mainly kind of like when you ran into those owls and you started like taking photos. I'm assuming you kind of went through a phase like everybody where you just kind of go out and just click, 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 and you're not really paying attention to what you're photographing.
For sure.
How did you evolve from that point to where you are now? What was the process, the steps that you went through?
So during the early days, I spent a lot of time with this specific eastern screech owl pair that year after year they would be very successful in uh, having babies, and I don't think I ever saw them lose or have any casualties or anything either. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And the female of the pair, for whatever reason, was super, super habituated. And, a lot of screech owls, when they're stressed or when you get too close, they'll kind of skinny up and try
Hmm.
and blend into their environment.
Yeah.
She would not care. She would continue sleeping. I'm not sure what was up with her. And during the fledgling season, I would go out almost every night and spend time with her and her family and stuff, which put me in some pretty unique scenarios. Um, and let's see, I'm trying to think of like narrow it down to one story here.
No, it's all right. It's all right.
Um, yeah, so there were certain points where she'd take the fledglings and they'd move around from different places in the forest there and
Hmm.
stuff. And some of the places there'd be really cool behaviors. She'd be feeding them all these really random things like worms and caterpillars and rodents
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff. And I would miss a lot of shots because it was really dark. They were in with the sticks.
Hmm.
and I really wanted some of those shots. So I that's what drove me to start going night after night. And
Yeah.
eventually the chicks would move, I would get slightly better looks at them and stuff. And even the parents too. I think one of the shots where I feel like that paid off was I have the mom sitting really low on a cottonwood tree where she just blends in perfectly with the bark.
Hmm.
And so that was definitely kind of when I started to, have an image in my head and work towards it for sure.
Hmm.
And then let's see, jumping forward to California, that was interesting. It was during the pandemic, and my mom had just moved to a place that had salamanders in the yard under all the rocks and stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you were talking about.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a macro, but suddenly I had all of these macro subjects
Hmm.
around me, and I was dying to take photos of them. So I figured out, um, I tried a bunch of different things and eventually came up with doing more of a bird's eye view on them, um, and getting them and showing their habitat from above, showing the leaves and the moss and
Hmm.
whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And that kind of became my thing for a little bit. And that was just a result of, being locked at home in the pandemic and not having access to certain gear. So I had to figure something else out.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, and I still shoot like that all the time. Even though now I do have a macro lens and stuff, I'd
Hmm.
almost prefer the kind of wider view for a lot of subjects, which I didn't think would be the case. But yeah.
Yeah. I've noticed a lot of your
Mhm.
work has like a lot, it's like high texture. Like there's a real big emphasis on texture and stuff like that. I think you just posted a shot recently. I like earlier, I think I saw it like a couple hours ago. It was like coral, not coral or something. It was like rocks, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I'm having, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, sea urchins.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. I went through everything but sea urchins. But yeah, it was really high texture and cool. And I noticed that a lot in your style. Did that start with the salamander aerial photographs? Because I remember the exact ones you're talking about, where they'd be kind of on an isolated leaf that was separated. Is that where that started,
Mhm.
or did it kind of start before that and then you applied that to the salamanders?
So I would say the salamanders is where it kind of kicked off for sure.
Mhm.
Looking back, there's definitely shots I have before that where there are elements of texture and stuff
Yeah.
that happen to be my favorite shots, but I wasn't shooting with that in mind. That was still more like oh, that's a cool, pretty thing. I'm gonna take a picture. But
Yeah, yeah.
with the salamanders and stuff, I've really just, I guess, trained myself to have an eye for scenes just looking straight down where there's different textures, whether that's something random like sea urchins or leaves.
Mhm.
I have some with duckweed and stuff like that growing on the pond surface and all of that. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's definitely more recent. But that's when I really find myself kind of getting into, the zone, the headspace where just everything kind of floats away.
Mhm.
And I'm like, whoa, this looks really cool. For whatever reason, I'm just drawn to stuff where there's a lot going on, a lot of little details. And I like to showcase how things fit into their environment and the world around them rather than just a portrait.
Mhm.
To a certain degree, there are cool things that I feel like portraits would be better, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I
Mhm.
it's kind of I'm in a tough spot right now because I upgraded gear last year and all I have is a
Mhm.
500 prime right now. And I really
Mm.
want to get more of that
Mhm.
high texture stuff. And I miss being able to do that with my older
Yeah.
setup. And it's funny because if you told me like 2 years ago, I was really big into the super clean, minimalistic, really blurred out. And I still do like that. And I still post a lot of that. But now it's
Yeah.
almost like
Yeah.
that's all I get with this setup. And I'm kind of like, I just
Mhm.
want something different, you know? If you had told me 2 years
Yeah.
ago or like a year ago when I was looking at upgrading that I would actually miss parts of my old setup, I'd be very confused. But
Yeah.
but that is something, I want to get like a 70 to 200, just get more of that texture. I think you
Mhm.
do a really good job at that. Now, one kind of area where you see a lot of the high texture, just like really the uniqueness in your work is the underwater stuff. I'm not
Mhm.
sure exactly how it
Yeah.
works, but can you go into that a little bit? Because that stuff is insane. It's just I'm confused about how
Thank
it
you.
works.
Yeah. So, I believe it or not, don't have any sort of underwater setup. I
Mm-hmm.
don't have any fancy underwater lights or anything. Very minimal sort of gear, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The main two lenses I switch between is a 24 to 100 millimeter, and then I
Mm-hmm.
have a 100 millimeter macro. And I use them both pretty evenly. And for underwater stuff, I kind of have played around with two different styles of images. One of them being isolating all these weird creatures and stuff on just straight black background.
Yeah.
And then the other one is I've been trying to showcase the environment too as the best I can,
Mm-hmm.
which does get tricky without housing, um, I will say. But for the black background, I guess I'll start with that first. The very first time I went properly tide pooling after moving up to Humboldt County for school, the very first nudibranch I ever saw, it was a nudibranch is a sea slug for those who aren't familiar. They're these really weird alien looking slugs, I guess you could say. And there's so much variety between them. And the first one I saw, I instantly was hooked, and I was like, okay, this is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And it was crawling on a piece of black, or not black, but dark kelp. So I took a photo just not knowing what to expect and stuff. And I got an instant black background in the photo
Mm-hmm.
because it just popped off of that. And I was like, wow, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And it was crazy how easy it was to just get a simple photo like that. But as time went on, I learned it's not always that easy. There's a lot of issues with lighting, and then also reflections get in the way and stuff,
Yeah.
on the water surface. So my solution for that is to just crouch over whatever I'm shooting and use my shadow
Mm-hmm.
to get
Yeah.
rid of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
reflection during the day. It gets very awkward. I'm sure people are like, what on earth is she doing out there?"
Are there like tons of people around you when you're doing this?
It depends on the location. At the tide pools, usually not. It's sometimes just me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. And I've also started looking at boat docks and stuff. There's a public boat dock near me, which I'm really lucky to have so close, and I'll go out there at night with a flashlight, and you can kind of lay down and look underneath at all of the stuff growing there,
Mm-hmm.
which is found I've found some really cool, really interesting things with that. But that's where it gets really tricky to take a black background photo. So what I've started to do is take I have just like a tray, a plastic like Tupperware container sort of thing. I'll
Yeah.
scoop it with water, um, and then gently like kind of coax whatever it is if it's not, completely stuck to something
Yeah. Yeah.
into there, and then take my pictures that way. And again, there's that difference between bird and mammal photography and stuff. It is a very controlled environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I follow the same sort of set of things as with herps, is to keep them close to get them back exactly where you found it as quick as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's been working out for me. And these things are very, especially in the tide pools and stuff, they're so used to the tides coming in and out and stuff that a lot of these animals are actually pretty hardy,
Mm-hmm.
um, which helps a little bit. But I do try to keep it in the pool as often as I can, just on that. I'll go get pieces of kelp and like put it in front of whatever it is and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is my ideal way to do it. But yeah.
Yeah, it's weird because out in the West Coast, there's like all these like I see on your story or in your post or like other stories from people that live out there. There's like all these
Mhm.
crazy nudibranchs and stuff in the water, and we just don't have that out here in the East Coast. At least I haven't seen it. I mean, we see there's some jellyfish I'll see sometimes, and maybe there's a fish somewhere I might see every once in a while. And aside from that, it's like, I see this weird white squishy looking creature like hanging out on a dock and it looks sick, but I'm like, I just have zero experience with that kind of thing. On one of your
Yeah.
recent posts, which was kind of crazy, the one with the jellyfish and the anchovies, was
Mhm.
that in that plastic container, or was that just it was that in a tide pool? Was that off a dock? How did that work?
Yeah. So that was at a boat dock. We had gone out at high tide, so there's just a surge of water, of plankton, everything's swept in, and a lot of it will get caught in the boat docks, the
Hmm.
things that kind of float around like the jellyfish.
Yeah.
So there were hundreds of those jellyfish absolutely everywhere.
Hmm.
And we would shine a flashlight into the water to take photos, and that would attract fish.
Yeah.
And like a lot of fish, like hundreds of these small little
Yeah.
anchovies and all of these fish. And um, at first, I was just trying to take pictures of the jellyfish that we were seeing, but then the fish started getting in the way. So I was like,
Hmm.
okay, you know what if I were to back up a bunch? And then I just saw all that chaos happening, just like line up in a picture.
Yeah.
So I took a couple shots, and the jellyfish are kind of slow. So I was able to turn the camera and kind of
Hmm.
compose a little bit, but most of
Yeah.
it was in the hands of all of the fish and stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm really happy with that one. Yeah.
That
That
one's
was just
sick.
a random night after school too. Like it's yeah, I really enjoy the going out at night and just having that flexibility to kind of shoot whenever. So,
Were you
yeah.
using a blue flashlight? Where did the blue coloration come from?
The blue is from the subjects, maybe a little bit from the flashlight.
Hmm.
The flashlight's just a generic, I don't know, it just kind of neutral white
Yeah, yeah, no, I
sort of
got you. I
thing.
got you.
Yeah, the jellyfish are definitely kind of tinted blue, and I guess the fish are too.
Well, it looks
So
good.
it's
I'm not like
yeah.
not, it looks great. I was just wondering
Yeah.
how like if there was some crazy lighting thing going on with like different color lights or whatnot.
My lighting is embarrassingly simple for all of these photos. It is not very well thought out. It's kind of, "Oh, will this work? Maybe." Yeah, it's worked for me. I'd love to upgrade and get some proper flash or something even,
Hmm.
but
Which
it's tricky to use that over water and stuff like that for
mhm.
sure. So,
What
yeah.
you could do is if you could find a way to get multicolored flashlights, you wouldn't even have to buy multicolored. You have to like if you got okay, whenever I think of something, I don't think of like buying the actual product. I think of like making it in the most sketchy way possible. But if you took a
Yeah.
a flashlight, right? And then those clear plastic folders from like CVS
Mhm,
or something, cut a
mhm.
hole in them, taped them over, put that circle over the flashlight and then use that and then put that in like a plastic bag and then put that underwater, you could like light it from different directions, you know,
Yes.
maybe. So if you could have like blue and orange and then light that up underneath the water and like from two different directions. And if it's like a jellyfish or
Mhm.
something clear, you might get these crazy kind of illuminated
That's an
colors going
idea.
on.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm
No,
sure you
that
could
would
find a better way to do it than what I just suggested, but I think it would that would be neat. I did something similar with I had a mantis fly in my house. I don't know if you know what those are.
Mhm,
I thought it was a praying
mhm.
mantis, like a baby praying mantis for hours until I was like, this thing looks funky, and I looked it up and it was a mantis fly. But
Yeah.
what I did is actually my sister helped me out with it. I took her phone and my phone, and one of them was orange, and then one of them was blue, just so like we searched up the
Mhm.
color and then screenshot
Like
it,
on
make
the
that.
screen? Yeah.
Mhm, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then we put tinfoil behind it, and it lit up the tinfoil, and it was like this crazy. It
Oh,
was like crinkled tinfoil, so it was this crazy like fire insanity in the background. I wish I had a
that's
subject
cool.
that was a little. It was fun. It was fun. I wish I had a subject that was a little more defined with it though, like a toad or something.
Mhm.
But if you could do pull something off like that, multicolored, that would be pretty sick. When you're taking these photos and you like have the file and bring it home, how much post processing are you doing on them, especially on the black background ones? Are you touch like, is
Yeah.
there things you have to touch up on, or is it just like purely out of the camera, like solid black background?
So it depends on the situation for sure.
Hmm.
I've had the most success with having the least post-processing, if that makes sense, on,
No, yeah.
the stuff I keep in the tide pools will
Hmm.
surprisingly be the ones that have a straight black background right away,
Yeah.
and it's the ocean, there's a lot going on, there's always gonna be some particles in there,
Hmm.
some grains of sand, some plankton, so there is some cloning and some masking and stuff like that,
Hmm.
and when I use the container, it's hard to find a surface that's, like, completely black.
Yeah.
right off the camera and stuff, and I'm still definitely experimenting with that. But there definitely is some more post-processing. I'd say masking's my main thing, and I'll just turn down the exposure a little bit on the,
Hmm.
the background and stuff.
Yeah.
But usually it's not too much.
Hmm.
It's not super strenuous, and it can get tricky when I have subjects like shrimp, for example, or just something with a bunch of little things sticking out everywhere. There's a lot of
Yeah.
touching up and stuff to do for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, usually it's surprisingly pretty straightforward. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's cool. I was thinking like I would assume sometimes you're just gonna run into things that you're gonna have to like clone out. I've never
Yeah.
only black backgrounds I've really gotten naturally were like if I had a subject that was, and once again I'm coming at this purely from almost purely a bird and mammal perspective.
Mhm.
But like if I had a really brightly lit subject against a dark background, I was able to get some
Mhm.
natural black backgrounds a couple of times, but
Yeah.
nothing kind of like this. Also, another question: you had the ring neck snake image that was
Mhm.
black background and it was like part of it was flipped up with the crazy colors and all that stuff.
Yeah.
How did you get that? Was that a similar thing that you did with this underwater stuff?
Yes, so it was definitely inspired by that.
Hmm.
And that was the first ringneck snake I'd ever seen, which if you're familiar with, the species and stuff on in California, that's kind of crazy. They're really common, and
Hmm.
it should not have taken me that long to find one.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of people when they find them, they'll kind of skip over them and be like, "Oh, I already have photos and stuff." But I
Hmm.
think the fact that it was my very first time seeing one of those, I was really drawn in to the colors and stuff. And that was a day where I didn't bring my container or the black background.
Hmm.
So the closest thing I had was my camera bag, which
Huh.
had black fabric on it.
Hmm.
And so I gently put the snake on there. And these snakes are usually very slow, and they use the colors. They'll kind of flip upside down a little bit, to kind of be like, surprise or don't eat me, as a defense mechanism.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
um, So that pose was all the snake. I just
Hmm.
placed it on the backpack and it kind of like organized itself. And that was definitely took some post processing. I have a better sort of process usually when I've tried using pieces of black paper. We have some felt we use and stuff like
Hmm.
that. That was just the day where I did not have any of that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely putting it on an isolated background, um, just to begin with, like just fabric or something like that, that helps a
Hmm.
lot. Mhm.
I know there's that, what's it called, Vanta Black paint or something like that. It's
Yeah.
like absorbs a ridiculous amount of light,
Like
and when
all of
someone,
it, yeah.
yeah, when someone paints an
Mhm.
object with it, it just looks like a hole in reality. If you could get your
Mhm.
hands on some of that and paint some paper that way, you
That
can
would
make
be
some,
perfect, yeah.
yeah, you can make some trippy looking images like that, especially if you submit it to like wildlife
Mhm.
photographer of the year where they ask for raws and it's just like a frog in harsh light on a completely black background. So it looks
Yeah.
100% fake, but the raw is just
Mhm.
exactly like that. I don't know. Sorry, I keep throwing
Mhm.
out ideas that are popping into my head for this.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
that could be something worth trying.
I have one more thing to add about that,
Mhm.
if anyone's interested in doing this stuff, to try and use stuff that isn't, toxic. To if you're using sea
Yeah,
creatures and
that's
stuff
probably a
like
good
that,
idea.
or
Yeah.
amphibians,
Hmm.
maybe, use don't use paint, for example. I don't know the full
Yeah.
details of it, but definitely kinda do your research and stuff for sure.
For
But
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. I remember
Little disclaimer.
yeah, like don't use
Yeah.
like a container covered in dish soap or something like that. That's probably not something
Yeah,
you
yeah,
want to
yeah.
do.
Just
I
be
rem-
mindful about it, yeah.
I did my research on
Yeah.
amphibians because I really did want to get into it, and I did try a couple times, and I was in communication with one of my friends that was also kind of doing it. Him and one of
Mhm.
my other friends went out on the night during the big migration that we have out here. I don't know if
Yeah.
you guys really have that, but the first rain of this like of the spring,
Yeah. It's
like
crazy. Mhm.
thousands of them like flock towards these big pools, and they were just like, they
Mhm.
said they were just everywhere all over the leaf litter. They were just getting tons of photos of them. but I was talking to
Mhm.
him and we were doing research on the gloves, and I think they react badly to latex. I want to say, I don't know. Don't quote me on that. If you're listening, you're going to want to fact check that. But
Yeah.
just do your research to make sure if you're handling subjects, you're not going to like poison them. Just to
Yeah.
make sure, especially with amphibians and sea creatures. I think
Mhm.
it's the most important there.
Yeah.
Now, we talked earlier about you're in college and you're majoring in wildlife and you want to apply your photography to that. What are your goals with your photography? Like, what do you want to achieve with it in the future? Kind of like, what are you working towards?
Again, I don't have a very specific pinpoint beyond just wanting to have it be a regular part of my life.
Hmm.
And it would be incredible to kind of use these images towards something. I have fun. I go out and I'll be in these very beautiful situations and I'll see crazy things, and it's, posting them online and stuff. It's kind of heartwarming to see people's reactions sometimes, and to get people excited about these really tiny little blobs that live in the ocean and stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Mhm. And I think I just enjoy using it to kind of, I would say, spread awareness, but more just to like draw attention to some of the more overlooked things in the
Mhm.
world.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know if that'll be, you know, through working for an organization or just selling prints or something, but I would love to just kind of continue doing what I'm doing for now and just see where that takes me.
Mhm. Um,
Yeah.
you mentioned so like an organization. I do want to come back to this topic real quickly, but weren't you an ambassador for Girls Who Click, or am I remember?
Yes.
Okay, you were. Yeah, yeah. So can you like talk a little
Yes.
bit about that organization? I know this is kind of a curveball, but it just popped into my head.
Yeah, no, you're good. So Girls Who Click is um a woman-led organization that focuses on empowering women and girls and young adults and stuff into the nature wildlife photography field, because it can be hard to get started, and it is, in certain areas, definitely a very male dominated field for sure.
Yeah.
And so their main thing, or the main thing that I was involved with, was their ambassador program. So I was selected, and they select new ambassadors every year.
Hmm.
Um, and I was paired with a mentor, who kind of helped me build my portfolio, and I had a lot of opportunities come my way and stuff because of that.
Hmm.
And something else that was really special about that group was, there were like mass group Zoom calls and stuff, which sounds kind of chaotic, but it was
Yeah.
really cool to just hear from all these different people and all these different walks of life and stuff. Just,
Hmm.
their stories in photography, their journeys. You get to ask questions to a bunch of people and stuff like that. So it's a very unique sort of community. And yeah, that definitely played a big role in my photography and kind of gave me some cool opportunities
Hmm.
and opened some doors for me as well. Some cool
Yeah.
travel stuff
Yeah.
that wasn't through them, but it was because of them that I
Hmm.
had that opportunity. So
Was that like
yeah.
the Africa trip you're talking about, or?
Yes, so that was with my mentor, who I had been put in touch with through the program. So without the program, I probably wouldn't have known her and wouldn't have,
Yeah.
had access to an opportunity like that. But yeah.
Mhm. That's cool. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you
Mhm.
for talking about that because, I've wanted to learn more about that organization. I just haven't
Yeah.
gotten around to it. One more thing I do want to
Yeah.
mention before we move on to our next topic about
Mhm.
the thing I want to mention about like what you're doing with your photography. I saw in your story, are you building a website right now?
I am building a website right now.
Nice.
I could probably publish it right now, but I'm scared and I'm a bit nitpicky about some things
No, I know
still.
that feeling exactly. Yeah. I worked on mine for like 3 months.
Yeah.
I kept building on it and I was like, oh, I should do this way. And then I'd spend another week and I'm like, oh, maybe I should
Mhm.
spend 3 more days designing my logo. And I just kept, procrastinating on that. What's your goal with your
Mhm.
website? Is it just to have like one big online portfolio all in one place or?
Yeah, as for right now, it is a portfolio. I've had a lot of people, be like, "Oh, I'm not on Instagram. How can I see your work and stuff like
Hmm.
that?" And I'm only on Instagram right now, so
Yeah.
that would be good. It's also forcing me to organize my photos, which I should have done a long time ago. But
Yeah.
it's helpful in that sense too. Um, and then yeah, I would love to sell prints and stuff like that. For now, I'm just selling, I have an Etsy store, not
Oh,
for
nice.
photography, but for artwork and stuff like
Stickers,
that.
right? The stickers.
Stickers
Yeah.
and hopefully some prints soon and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'd also love to I'm still kind of getting a grasp for how to sell prints online and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But
I know. Yeah, there's the Etsy route you can take, and then also this is just like for photography, but also just like e-commerce in general. I don't know if have you looked into like Shopify at all?
I have
Hmm.
briefly, but yeah, I haven't just went for it yet,
Yeah, because
which I
with
will
Shop
soon, I'm sure.
Shopify is nice because it's not like a marketplace like Etsy is. It's like a your own website that you get, and then you could. Are you building on Squarespace for your actual website, or which?
Yeah,
What are you?
yeah.
So I think you can integrate Shopify with Squarespace, and then you could align your Shopify store with a print on demand kind of platform like Printify or something. So you could actually do print on
Mhm,
demand for your photos, and then you
mhm.
can run like Facebook ads and stuff like that to market your prints, and then bring
Okay. Yeah.
bring traffic into there from like Facebook or something, and then you can target certain demographics. That's something I'm looking at doing for marketing prints and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because with Etsy, you're like competing with a bunch of people on there, and it's a huge marketplace, and
Yeah.
it's nice because like Etsy is bringing in traffic, right? But and with the
Mhm.
Shopify store, like you're gonna have to put in the work to advertise. But if you can do that, you're
Yeah.
completely not competing with that whole other market of people.
That's true.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
I
is
was
true.
I was curious. I need to revamp the print section on my website because it's
Mhm.
horrible. I threw it up in like 2 seconds. I've never made a sale.
Mhm.
I'm not surprised because I was not even trying. I was just like, okay, well, it needs a print section, so voila. And I just yeah.
Mhm.
No, but that's cool. It's having a website's nice because it just like it looks cool. I put a lot of effort into like making my website look cool. And when I show it to people, they're like, oh, this is a good website, and it feels
Yeah.
nice. And it's also nice because you can have like with my posts, I try to like have a couple days in between. I try to post like really my best stuff on Instagram.
Mhm.
But with a website, I just throw up all the images I think are good enough to be up there. And it's kind of like a big hub where I can share all of my work. So I do enjoy that. So when do you
Yeah.
think that's going to be up roughly?
Within the next month,
Hmm.
hopefully sooner.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would use the excuse that I'm busy and stuff, but honestly, I'm just kind of intimidated to, kind of
Dude,
hit the publish button and stuff.
here's
But
my thing, man. I
yeah.
just say like you can still like I know people who keep putting it off. Like you can work on it after it's published. I would advise just
This is
throwing it
true.
out there. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, if there's this huge glitch on it or this massive bug, or if like there's a page that says half complete, don't throw it up there. But if it's all mostly done for
Yeah.
the most part, I would just recommend just publish it, get it out there and then
Mhm.
continue to work on it, because I know people that keep procrastinating and pushing it off. And I'm like, dude, it's been two
Yeah.
years. Where's your website? They're like, I'm still working on
Yeah.
it. I'm like, okay. Yeah, but that'll be cool. I'm looking forward to that. Now,
Mhm.
the next kind of two topics I want to talk about, and this is something you kind of before when we were talking prior to the podcast, you talked about you mentioned you wanted to discuss.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how photography has helped you cope with like certain elements in your life, like grief and stuff like that from events that happen in your life?
Yeah. So earlier this year, my dad passed away, and that's been an interesting experience to say the least,
Yeah,
and my dad was the one who got me into all of the nature and photography stuff.
yeah,
He was the one who was with me for all of the owl experiences and stuff that I mentioned earlier. And it's been difficult, and I can't, lie and say that, oh, I've been, fine, and that
yeah.
this has been an easy process, because it hasn't been, and I don't think it would be for anyone. And
Mhm.
I'm just really grateful that I've had photography, and that I have um this sort of interest that can help take me out of my head and help me focus on something else for a while. Um, because getting into that headspace where I have a really cool scene in my camera or where I'm out looking for all these different things,
Mhm.
if it's a good day, that's all I'm focusing on. And it's
Yeah.
just a relief. It's a break. Um and I feel like when I'm able to tap into that during some of the rougher periods of time, throughout the weeks or something like that,
Mhm.
I feel like that's when I get my best shots, which is interesting. And it again just means a lot to me that I'm
Yeah.
you know, it's the whole everything that's happened has just made little moments like that so much more meaningful for me. And
Yeah.
um yeah, it's it's what gets me out of bed sometimes in the morning. And
Mhm.
when I was first starting to work on my website, I was excited, and that gave me routine, that gave me stability and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I don't necessarily get that with other aspects of my life, like school and stuff like that.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely
So
not
it's
school. Yeah.
like, yeah, again,
Mhm.
just been really special. And there's been moments too where I'd say for me, grief has made me almost a more emotional person than I was before, which I'm sure is
Mhm.
probably similar for a lot of people. And there's been experiences I've had out in the field and stuff like that where it's like so pretty, or there's something crazy happens and stuff. I just feel it like 10 times more. And in a
Yeah.
way, I'm like almost grateful for that because it's really special.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that. For people that are listening who may have gone through like something similar or maybe not to the exact same degree, but a lot of people have some kind of one or multiple events in their life that are like really negative from an emotional standpoint.
Yeah.
Were there any like actionable mindsets or ways you tied like wildlife photography into that? Like actionable things that a viewer who may be currently dealing with something like similar or may in the future deal with something similar? Are there any actionable things that you could uh describe that helped you like get through it, if that makes sense? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd say I'm sure it's different for everyone, but for
Mhm.
me was to I had to kind of learn how to be more lenient and accepting of myself and to not force it. If I was planning on going out one night, or if I was planning on going out for the low tide, and when the time came, I was just exhausted and not feeling it,
Mhm.
just being able to kind of be okay giving yourself that space. Um, but I would say if you're feeling up for it, or kind of on the fence, to go for it. And I think just being outside, photography or not in general, is very comforting, very healing. And, just being able to go out and see something new every day and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, just healing and special.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm still pretty early on in this whole, I guess, process or situation or whatnot. But um, I guess just trying to be nice to yourself and, kind of for me, it's been a lot more learning how to go with sort of the ebb and flow of everything happening in my life. And
Mhm.
it's usually when I'm in situations where, I'm not super forced or there's not a lot of stress on myself, is when I get, some of my favorite shots and when I see crazy things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Do you find that it's mostly like the photography aspect, or is it more just being out in nature? Because I know a lot of people that aren't even super into nature, when they have something traumatic or something really bad that happens in their life, turning to
Mhm.
nature helps them with that. And I know in the past when I've dealt with difficulties, it was, I mean, yeah, photography helped me, just being out and being able to
Mhm.
focus and being passionate about something and losing the hours in that helped.
Mhm.
I felt more like it was just the being in nature element that
Yeah.
helped me with that. And I'm sure the being passionate about wildlife helps too, because that gives you something to look for and be intentional about and kind of lose yourself in. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah. So I've definitely had experiences where it's both, more so nature, more so photography and stuff.
Hmm.
I would say for me, the moments where I'm, mostly engulfed in being outside and very present is when I'm taking photos of something,
Yeah.
especially the tide pools and stuff like that. Um, like while I'm looking for stuff, I'm definitely focused on that, but it's when I see that shot and get excited, I'm like, wow, that's really cool, where it really kind of starts to sink in a
Hmm.
little bit.
Yeah.
But there's also plenty of times where just being out in nature has been really nice. There's been times where I haven't even brought my camera and I'll just go for a hike or something like that. And it's also incredibly powerful, but in a different way almost.
Hmm.
And then there's moments where both of them kind of cross over. Like the other week, I had a hike where we saw 5 bears within 20 minutes of each other, which was absolutely crazy.
That's insane.
And
Yeah.
I did get that rush. I
Hmm.
got some really nice portraits of,
Hmm.
one of them, through photography, but that bear was just kind of kept doing its thing really close to us, and I had a moment where I was able to put my camera down and just watch and just kind of take it all in and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and I'd say that's definitely one of the stronger sort of senses of calm and peace and stuff like that that's stood out to me, so
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, no, I honestly I feel really fortunate at times to have the innate interest in wildlife and nature because I know a lot of people just don't have that. I feel like everyone's born with that as a kid and then they kind of lose it, when they
Mhm.
get older. And being able to take joy out of something that's so simple is I find probably really helpful in situations like these. Just being able to go out
Yeah.
and find a bear and look at a bear and be like, that's sick. It's a bear. That's awesome. you know, like
Mhm.
stuff like that, or owls. For me, a big thing is owls. Like I can get lost in finding owls completely.
Mhm.
Like I can just,
Yeah.
especially right now, it's like, it's hard to find them. I'm sure and
Mhm.
like northern saw-whet owls, it's just like it's a rhythm. Like you
Yeah.
check a tree, you check it this way, you check it from that angle, you walk around it 2 times, check up
Mhm.
near the trunk, and then check the next one. And it's really easy to just get lost in your head and kind of help you
Yeah.
cope with those emotions. And I feel like I just feel really fortunate. I don't know if you feel the same way, but just to be have such an innate interest in such a simple, simplistic, available thing, you know?
Yeah. No, I do agree. And I'm also very fortunate to live somewhere where, there's just so much wilderness and stuff readily accessible like that.
Hmm.
But I also, going back to where I grew up, in Colorado and stuff, I was able to find places to get lost in the middle of neighborhoods, in the middle of town and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, which is also what was has also been really important for me in my life. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like a lot of people like it is nice being in like a huge wilderness area, right? Like that's awesome.
Mhm.
But I feel like a lot of people don't realize how much is around them. Like there's just tons of
Yeah.
stuff all over the place. Like I know you were mentioning earlier, like the screech owls that were like in the city and super chill that you had. I've got a screech
Mhm.
owl that's been there for like 5 years at this place. It's literally like right on the main road in town. On the
Yeah.
tree is in the person's driveway, right? The roots are in the driveway. It's sitting there
Mhm.
right on the sidewalk. You can walk up and it won't even look at you. If it wakes up, it might look at you for half a second and
Mhm.
just go back to sleep, and I think people don't
Yeah.
realize it's like how much stuff is around them, whether it be, I mean, usually it's
Mhm.
not as cool as like a bear or a mountain lion or something, but it might be like smaller owls or like even like medium sized owls, like a barred or coyotes or
Mhm.
stuff like that. And, it's nice being able to take enjoyment out of something that's just readily available if you're willing to look for it.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. I think we're coming up on an hour pretty soon, which I know is kind of
Mhm.
like the uh general like agreed upon time. Is there anything else you want to share either on this topic or anything that we talked about earlier, kind of before we start wrapping it up?
I guess kind of tying all of it in together, if you're ever feeling uninspired or unmotivated, to just kind of do some research on the different areas around you, even if that's just a, city park or,
Hmm.
a little creek through a neighborhood or something like that. There most chances are there probably will be stuff there.
Hmm.
And even for me with the sea creatures and stuff, I go to a boat dock half the time for that stuff, and um it's just crazy how much life is on these man-made structures and in such urban environments where you would least expect it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
honestly, man, it's like the stuff is there if people are willing to just looking for it and do some research and stuff. Like you can just find tons of crazy stuff that's around you and have access to all of that. Because I know some people are like, "Oh, well, I'd love to do it, but I'm not in the right spot for it." And like, there's stuff around, if you look in the right places. Well, thank you for coming on. That was a really good episode. I want to thank you guys for watching as well. Thank you for coming on again, and I'll see you guys on the next episode. Sweet.
Thank
Nice.
you.
That was a good
Yeah.
episode. That was fun.